Okay, hey you guys, so I'm sorry this video is very late, but I don't know, I was gonna work on it all morning, but then I went to church, and then I went grocery shopping, so I just knew it was gonna come out on time. But, this video is very long, so, I'm gonna make the intro kind of short, and I hope you guys enjoy this video because I feel like I do like it, but it could definitely be a lot better. I don't know. Also, comment down below your favorite parts of this video, like favorite timestamp, because I'm gonna comment mine, and I want to see if any of us have the same ones. I feel that'd be pretty cute. But yeah, I don't have much to say besides enjoy. Bye.
Atsumu は時々、びっくりするくらい考えなしだよね、つう話。なんやねん失礼な
Sakuatsu woke to a bare chest under him, solid and familiar. A heartbeat thudding calmly beneath his ear, like background noise he hadn't realized he'd memorized. An arm was slung around his waist, fingers curled in slightly, and possessive in that unthinking way people got in the quiet hours. The other arm was stretched above them, a hand lazily scrolling on a phone. The glow of the screen illuminated golden skin, casting soft shadows over the sharp line of a collarbone, the smudge of a hickey near the curve of his neck. Sakuatsu blinked slowly, trying not to move too much. The sheets were rumpled around their legs, kicked halfway off the bed. His thigh was pressed against Atsumu's, skin against skin, and all the air in the room still tasted like last night, warm breath, muffled groans, sweat, and something lingering in his chest he didn't want to name. He stirred slightly, letting out a breath. Atsumu looked down. Then, without pause, he leaned in and pressed a kiss to the top of Sakuatsu's head. Sakuatsu's chest tightened. He closed his eyes for half a second longer. I have to go, he murmured, voice still rough with sleep. Okay, Atsumu said casually, eyes on his phone. But he didn't move. Sakuatsu frowned and tapped his fingers against the curve of Atsumu's pec, a gentle, unimpressed tap. I said I have to go, Mia. Atsumu finally turned his head toward him, rolling his eyes dramatically. Fine. He shifted, peeling his arm off Sakuatsu's waist and letting it flop to the side. He tilted his head, eyes tracing the way Sakuatsu sat up, sheets sliding down his torso, revealing pale skin and a few fresh marks along his ribs. He smiled. Sakuatsu caught it in his peripheral. Stop looking at me like that. Atsumu grinned wider. I can't help it. Sakuatsu picked up a pillow and lobbed it directly at his face. Ow! Atsumu yelped, catching it late and clutching it close to his chest like he'd been wounded. Oh Omi, you're so mean to me. Sakuatsu rolled his eyes, already swinging his legs over the edge of the bed, reaching for his underwear. You like it? Unfortunately. Atsumu muttered, watching him unabashedly. They got dressed in tandem, falling into the easy rhythm of people who've done this before, this quiet, strange little routine that wasn't really supposed to exist. It wasn't like they spent the night every time. But this was the fourth time they've hooked up, and Sakuatsu was starting to know the exact brand of Atsuma's favorite shampoo. You remember that movie Bokken made us watch? The Kissing Booth? Yeah. I just need you to know that Elle was in the wrong. I heard from a little birdie that you think otherwise. Atsumu said casually, pulling his shirt over his head. She knew what she was doing when she'd kissed him again. Sakuatsu scoffed a laugh. Lee was being so selfish that whole movie. Elle did nothing wrong. Oh my gosh, you're such a sucker for the main character. Why are you falling for her sob story? She hardly had a sob story. You're just projecting onto Lee because you like bad people. Atsumu grinned. Explains why I like you so much. Shut up. A beat passed. Then Sakuatsu looked down at his feet, shoulders tense. This is the last time we do this. He said it quietly, but clearly, like he was trying to make himself believe it more than anyone else. Atsumu didn't miss a beat. Okay Omi, whatever you say. It was the fourth time he'd said that too. Sakuatsu didn't respond, just reached for the bedroom door. His hand was on the handle when Atsumu's voice called after him again. Wait, Omi. He paused, glanced over his shoulder. What? Atsumu gave him a lopsided smile, hair still a little messy, t-shirt slightly wrinkled from being yanked directly off the floor. Kiss me? Sakusa let out a long-suffering sigh but walked back anyway, footsteps soft on the wood floor. He leaned in for what was supposed to be a brief brush of lips. But Atsumu tilted his head, caught Sakusa's bottom lip just right, and suddenly Sakusa was leaning in harder, hands finding Atsumu's jaw, Atsumu's hands sliding under Sakusa's shirt again. Breath hitched. A sigh between kisses. Sakusa melted before he could stop it. 1 minute turned into 5. 5 into 15. 30 minutes passed as if they were seconds. When they finally broke apart, both flushed and breathing hard, Sakusa shoved lightly at Atsumu's chest. Mia, I have to go. Okay, I'm sorry. But Atsumu was still smiling like a man who'd gotten away with something. He trailed after Sakusa toward the door, watching him fuss with his jacket, still out of breath. One more goodbye kiss? Sakusa gave him a look, lips twitching. No, I have to get ready for a family dinner. You're so cold. Atsumu whispered dramatically. Sakusa hesitated, then leaned in, and was sunk in for 15 more minutes. When he finally pulled away, flushed and trying not to smile, he smacked the side of Atsumu's head lightly. Goodbye Mia. That was rude. Atsumu called after him as the door closed. Later that day. The dinner table was loud. Too many voices overlapping, too many conversations happening at once. Sakusa sat with his hands in his lap, politely nodding as his uncle droned on about real estate, his mother refilling wine glasses with a warm smile. He checked out halfway through dessert. His phone buzzed on the table, and when he peeked down, he found 3 new notifications. First was a text from Motoya that read, "Sorry I couldn't make it, don't let my mum talk to you about crystals again lol." Then there was a flurry of messages from the NSBY group chat. And finally was one from Atsumu. Atsumu and Sakusa private messages. Missing you Omi. What you eating? Sakusa felt the smile bloom before he could stop it. He angled his phone toward his plate, snapped a picture of the bland roast and over-steamed vegetables, and typed. Wish you were here to entertain me. I often forget how boring my family can be. Oh babe, glad you know I would have made that dinner a 10-part drama. He chuckled, glancing up quickly to make sure no one noticed. Next time I'm dragging you with me. The next day. Everyone was in various states of undress, getting changed into practice gear. The usual noise of banter and laughter bounced off the tiled walls. Sakusa moved slower than usual, lethargic and stiff as he peeled off his shirt, folding it with unnecessary precision. His limbs ached, muscles tight, lower back sore. He blamed Atsumu for that. As if on cue, a warm palm pressed to his bare lower back. It slid just slightly, like it was trying to soothe something rather than tease. Atsumu leaned in close enough that Sakusa could feel his breath by his ear. You okay? He murmured, voice low and surprisingly gentle. Sakusa didn't look at him, just hummed in acknowledgement as he continued rummaging in his locker. Atsumu nodded, like that was answer enough. Okay. He whispered back, hand still on Sakusa's lumbar. He rubbed slow, lazy circles into the sore spot. That earned a tiny pause in Sakusa's movements. Not quite melting, but not pulling away either. Across the room, Bakuto looked up, a towel slung over his shoulder. If I didn't know any better, I'd think you two were a couple. Both Sakusa and Atsumu turned their heads at the same time, shooting Bakuto identical expressions, eyebrows drawn, eyes narrowed, lips twisted into matching masks of disgust and confusion. Hinata beamed from his bench. Yeah, you guys are like carbon copies of each other. Without missing a beat, Sakusa and Atsumu looked back toward their lockers and said, flatly and in unison, whatever. Sakusa leaned over and slapped Atsumu's arm, muttering. Stop. Then he walked out of the locker room, spine straight despite the dull ache in his back. Atsumu rubbed the spot on his arm, eyebrows furrowed. Not fully in pain, but like he was working something out. The team was mid-warm-up when Sakusa approached Atsumu again. They were spread across the gym, stretching out stiff muscles and joking around. Atsumu was talking to Bakuto, something animated and stupid if the way Bakuto was cackling was any indication. Sakusa tapped his shoulder. Atsumu turned, already smiling. Yaomi? Sakusa glanced away and muttered just loud enough to hear. Help me stretch. Atsumu blinked, then grinned. Or. He pinched Sakusa's cheek without warning. Of course, my little precious sugar plum. Don't call me that. Sakusa muttered, too sore and tired to do more than grab Atsumu's wrist and drag him away from the others. He dropped to the floor, one leg pulled up in a hamstring stretch. Push my knee back, he instructed. Atsumu moved in front of him, hands settling on his leg, gently pressing downward to deepen the stretch. Sakusa winced slightly, adjusting his arms behind him to brace himself. But then Atsumu's hands started to drift down his thigh, over the curve of his hip, sliding toward dangerous territory. Hands. Sakusa snapped, swatting his hand. Stop. Atsumu chuckled low and unrepentant. Sorry, just muscle memory, you know. Sakusa leaned back on his palms, stretching his legs out again, chest rising with a breath. Atsumu knelt in front of him, still smirking. Sakusa looked up at him, a flat, unimpressed stare. It said, if you don't stop touching me like that, I will never speak to you again. Atsumu understood this much, and held up both hands. Promise I'll behave. Then, as if to prove it, he leaned down and pressed a soft kiss to the crown of Sakusa's head. Sakusa's eyes fluttered shut, but he didn't respond. If anything, he seemed to be cozying up to it instead. And for the rest of practice, Atsumu kept his word. No inappropriate touches, no flirty whispers. Just clean sets, smooth tosses, and stolen glances when no one was watching. The locker room was quieter now. Hinata and Bakuto were already showered and back in their street clothes. Sakusa had changed quickly, already dressed and standing by the door. Atsumu, hair damp and body still glistening from the shower, was pulling on his boxers when Bakuto called across the room. You coming with us, Atsumu? We're gonna go treat ourselves to some ramen. Atsumu paused, looked toward Sakusa, towel still around his neck. You going? Sakusa shook his head, slow and subtle. Atsumu turned back to Bakuto and shrugged. Sorry, I think I'll pass this time, Bokken. That's too bad, I'll see you tomorrow. Bakuto chirped, and he and Hinata headed out in a blur of noise and energy. When the door swung shut behind them, silence filled the space again, just the low hum of fluorescent lights and the sound of Atsumu towel drying his hair. You coming back to mine? Atsumu asked casually, tossing his towel on the bench. Sakusa didn't look up from where he was examining his nails. Maybe. Atsumu grinned, stepping into his sweatpants. You know you want to. I'm too tired tonight. Sakusa replied, and it wasn't a lie. His muscles ached, his back was still sore, and he needed sleep. And maybe 10 packs if ice. Atsumu walked closer, a teasing lilt in his voice. Let's just watch a movie and chill out. Nothing crazy. Sakusa gave him a suspicious side glance. Ask me nicely. Atsumu tilted his head, the grin still playing on his mouth. He walked up, offered his hand like he was inviting him to a dance. Sakusa stared at it for a second before sighing and taking it. Atsumu pulled him up, hand still wrapped around his fingers, then reached out and cupped Sakusa's face in both palms. Baby, can you please come over so we can spend the night together? He murmured, a little mocking, a little sincere. Sakusa stared at him for a beat. Then laughed in his face. It was short and sharp, sarcastic. He shoved at Atsumu's chest lightly. You sound like we're dating or something. Atsumu raised an eyebrow, eyes flicking to the side like he was thinking about it. So, you coming? Sakusa turned away, adjusting the strap of his bag. Sure. Atsumu grinned, and as Sakusa walked toward the door, he reached out and smacked his ass. Sakusa flinched, turned back with a look. Stop that, Mia. He hissed, covering the spot with his hand like it would protect him. He walked faster. Atsumu jogged to catch up, slinging his bag over one shoulder. You're so shy, it's cute. They walked back to the apartment complex together, bickering softly under the dim glow of the streetlights. Their hands kept brushing, accidentally at first, then deliberately. Finally, after the 5th brush, Sakusa glanced sideways with narrowed eyes. Atsumu chuckled, reached out, and laced their fingers together. Sakusa tried to tug his hand back once, but ultimately let the warmth of Atsumu's hand take him in. The second they got inside Atsumu's apartment, they kicked their shoes off, and hung their jackets lazily onto the coat rack. The only light came from the TV flickering to life as Atsumu scrolled through movie options. Sakusa drifted toward the couch and sank into one corner, knees tucked up. Atsumu joined him a moment later, sprawling out at the opposite end with a cup of shochu on the table, and the remote still in hand. There were 2 whole pillows between them, 2 big, puffy, metaphorical boundaries. For a while, it was normal. The kind of normal that came from both of them pretending not to glance over every few seconds. But halfway through the movie, something shifted. Maybe it was the way Sakusa stretched out his legs so his uncovered feet touched Atsumu's thigh. Or maybe it was the way Atsumu leaned into it. Somewhere between scene changes and idle drink sipping, the space between them closed, the pillows shifted, and Sakusa slid down until his head was resting just over Atsumu's shoulder. Atsumu could feel his breath, warm against his neck. Sakusa's hand drifted across his chest, splaying out like he was grounding himself there. He nudged his nose against the side of Atsumu's jaw, soft and barely there. Atsumu tried to keep watching the screen. Keyword, tried. But Sakusa was doing that thing he did, kissing him like he didn't realize he was doing it. Little grazes of lips along his jawline, barely there presses of affection, again and again. Just enough to make Atsumu squirm. Thought you were too tired. Atsumu murmured, voice slightly strained. Sakusa didn't miss a beat. Shh. Then he kissed him on the lips. Atsumu didn't pull away, instead, he leaned in, responding to the kiss with a soft hum that buzzed in his throat. His hand found Sakusa's neck, fingers threading up into his hair. Sakusa shifted, practically climbing into his lap now, and Atsumu let him, one arm looping around his waist. The kiss deepened, turned hungrier, messier. Sakusa tasted like mint and alcohol, like something addictive. Atsumu's other hand slipped under the hem of Sakusa's shirt, his fingers trailing across the skin at his waist, tracing the dip of his spine. Sakusa kissed him again, lips dragging down from his mouth to the curve of his throat. His hands slid up Atsumu's chest, palms flat and hungry. And then, Atsuma's phone started ringing, and they both jumped. Sakusa blinked, panting softly, eyes half-lidded. Ignore it, he said without hesitation, already leaning back in. But Atsumu pulled away just enough to pull a groan out of Sakusa. And if it's important? Sakusa looked annoyed. But Atsumu reached for the phone, glancing at the screen. Atsumu answered with a flat. What, Samu? Hello brother, nice to talk to you too. Osamu's dry voice said on the other end. Whatcha doin'? Atsumu, trying very hard to not sound breathless, replied. Watching a movie. That's good to hear. Osamu said in a relieved tone. Cause I'm outside your apartment. There was a beat of pure silence. Atsumu sat up so fast, Sakusa lost his balance and toppled sideways off his lap and onto the floor with a thud. I'm sorry, you're outside where? Atsumu yelled, phone still at his ear. Your apartment? First off, why are you yelling? And second, what was that thud? Atsumu sprinted to the door, yanked the peephole cover aside, and, yep, there he was. Osamu, standing outside like he didn't just derail the best part of Atsumu's day. He flung the door open, hanging up mid-call. What the hell are you doing here? Osamu held up a takeout bag like it was obvious. Bakuto said you didn't come out with them tonight so I brought you food. Just then, Osamu looked past Atsumu and saw Sakusa. His expression shifted from confused to more confused. Hey? Sakusa blinked up at him. Hi. Osamu blinked back. I didn't really know you'd be here. On the floor no less, so I didn't bring you any floor food. Sakusa rose to his feet, brushing himself off. It's fine, I have to go anyways. No, wait, hold on. Atsumu said quickly, reaching for Sakusa's wrist, tugging him gently until they were chest to chest. He lowered his voice into a whisper saying. Why are you leaving? Sakusa leaned in. To give you and your brother some privacy. Atsumu stared at him for a moment, then turned to Osamu. Hey, Samu. Do you think we could maybe do this catch-up thing another time? Osamu narrowed his eyes, chuckling disbelievingly. Excuse me? I mean, you kinda interrupted my me time. Osamu's mouth fell open. Are you deadass right now? The bickering kicked off immediately. Something about respect, timing, and how Atsumu had enough me time as is. Meanwhile, Sakusa stood off to the side, fidgeting with the hem of his shirt, like he was debating fading into the drywall. Eventually, Osamu huffed, dropped the bag of food onto the floor, and walked out, muttering something about needing to get a new twin brother. Sakusa turned to Atsumu with a look that was one part disbelief, one part exasperation. "And why didn't you just let me leave?" Atsumu stepped closer, voice quieter now, more sure. His hands slid back to Sakusa's waist, thumbs brushing skin. "'Cause I planned to be with you tonight, and that's what I want to happen." Sakusa furrowed his brows and tilted his head. There was something like a challenge behind his eyes, but his arms still hooked loosely around Atsumu's shoulders, pulling him close. They hugged in the middle of the living room, quiet now, heartbeats slowing. Atsumu nuzzled his nose into Sakusa's neck. "And I'm really glad you're here." Sakusa hummed against him. Then, without letting go, Atsumu pressed a soft kiss to his cheek, big, a little playful, a little sweet. Sakusa melted into it without saying a word. Next day, post-practice. The heavy thud of cleats hitting the tiled floor echoed faintly as the team filtered into the locker room after practice. Sakusa was the last one in, trailing behind Inunaki, Hinata, and Atsumu. He barely made it to his locker before slumping forward against it, his shoulder resting on the cool metal, eyes closed. "Are you okay, Omi-san?" Hinata asked, halfway through peeling off his jersey. Sakusa gave a quiet grunt of affirmation, too tired to lift his head. Atsumu, who had just taken a swig from his water bottle, side-eyed him and then set it down. A moment later, he stepped behind Sakusa, slid a hand around his waist, and leaned in close to his ear. "You okay?" he murmured, voice low and private. "Yeah." Atsumu didn't move right away. He leaned in a little closer, then pressed a soft kiss under Sakusa's ear, quick, quiet, hidden. Then he stepped back like nothing happened and resumed undressing. Inunaki squinted at him from across the room. "Did you just?" "What?" "He's tired." Inunaki opened his mouth like he wanted to say more, but just then Mion walked in, clapping his hands and making an announcement about tomorrow's practice game. The conversation quickly shifted and whatever questions were forming dissolved. Atsumu walked into a nigiri and leaned against the counter, watching Osamu expectantly as he scrubbed down the cutting board with practiced efficiency. "Oh, now you wanna talk to me, huh?" Osamu said, not even looking up. Atsumu rolled his eyes. "You shoulda told me you were coming. I thought you loved surprises. Not when they are interrupting quality time." "What? Are you dating Sakusa or something?" Atsumu choked on nothing. "You? No." Osamu finally looked up, a brow cocked. "Be serious with yourself." "I am being serious." Atsumu said, too quickly, too defensive. "We're not dating Samu, we're just friends." His voice dropped a little, something tight in his jaw. Osamu's gaze lingered. "But you wanna be, right?" Atsumu stared down at the counter, then sighed and rubbed his face. "I don't need therapy, alright? Just let me know if you're free tonight." Osamu dried his hands on the towel. "Yeah, I'm free. Yuki's out with her friends today. How's that going, by the way?" Atsumu asked in a bubbly tone, with his hands under his chin with a cheeky smile flopping into a chair. Osamu's face relaxed, soft and pleased. "It's like I'm in one of those dumb movies, like, How to Build a Better Boy or something. I swear she was made for me." "You're disgusting." Osamu grinned. "Shut up. She has a pretty smile, she's funny, and she loves food to the same extent as me. You guys are gonna become like Cartman and Heidi." Osamu decides it's about time to hit him upside the head. "Anyways, you know she remembers my entire schedule? Like, to the hour. Okay, creepy Connie. Glad to see somebody match your freak though." Atsumu deadpanned, but he was smiling. "We also go to the market together sometimes on the weekends. She eats pickled plums. I hate pickled plums, but she makes them look good." Osamu chuckled. "It's stupid I don't know." They chat for a while after that, about their old high school classmates. Atsumu eventually had to leave, knowing they could continue this in near future. Later that night, Atsumu was lying on his back on the couch, book in his hand, with the TV on low, when his phone lit up with the notification that Sakusa was calling. He answered with a lazy grin. "Hey baby." "Hi." Sakusa said quietly. "Are you free?" Atsumu's heart skipped. Osamu's coming over in like 3 hours. "Why?" "Just wanted some company." Atsumu sat up a little, glancing at the clock. "You sure you don't wanna come over anyway?" "It's fine. I'll just see you tomorrow." Sakusa said softly. Wait. Atsumu sat up fully. "Stay on the phone with me until then." There was a pause. "Okay." They spoke for 2 hours. At first, it was about nothing. Volleyball. A stupid show Hinata had recommended. The weather. Then there was a tone shift, it felt more face to face. "I wish you were here with me." "I am." "I meant physically. I really like having you around Omi." Atsumu said, stretching across the couch. "And why is that?" Sakusa's voice was soft, curious. "Give me reasons." Atsumu bit his lips, trying to hide his smile from no one, eyes fluttering shut. "I like how you let me touch you wherever. I like how it feels to hug you, feels like I'm drowning, you know. I like how you look at me like you're exasperated, but I know you're loving every word. What else?" Sakusa's voice was low now, almost amused. "I really like your big ass eyes. Everyone thinks they're black, but they are actually green. I like that you had a ton of piercings but took them all out. I like that you have a tramp stamp that only me and Motoya know about. I like that you call me at night 'cause that's when you talk the most. I love how when I'm rough with you, it turns you on even more. I love when I run my fingers down your spine, your back arches." "Okay, you can stop." Sakusa's voice was tight. Flustered, maybe. "Is that enough reasons?" Atsumu teased. Maybe." Sakusa muttered. "You can continue later." Atsumu sighed deeply into the phone. "Still really wish you were here right now. You're stupid." He was about to fire back when there was a knock at the door. "Samus here." He groaned. "That's too bad." Sakusa said lightly. "I was just about to tell you everything I liked about you." "Wait, huh?" Click. The call ended. Atsumu stared at his screen like it was his least favorite character. Another knock. "I'm coming," he yelled, dragging himself to the door, opening it. "Who were you talking to?" Atsumu shut the door behind him. "Just Omi." Osamu narrowed his eyes. Okay." They made it to the couch before Osamu paused. "I'm gonna ask you something. But you gotta be 100% honest." "I'm always 100% honest," Atsumu said, plopping down and propping one leg up. Osamu turned to him. "Do you like Sakusa?" Atsumu stared at him. Long enough that it was an answer in itself. "Yeah," he whispered, rubbing at his eyes. "Yeah, I do." "So tell him. It's pretty clear he likes you back." "You don't know him, Samu. He's very direct. If he wanted me, he'd make it obvious." "Maybe your definitions of obvious aren't the same." Atsumu went quiet. Then, "We've been sleeping together in secret for a month." Osamu closed his eyes, let out a sharp, nasal sigh. "Only you would do something this stupid. The only reason I didn't tell you is 'cause I knew you'd try and talk me out of it. And I knew I couldn't pass an opportunity like this up." He paused, swallowed. "And now that I say it out loud, I sound real pathetic. You're insane." "Yeah, well. I can't believe you of all people are keeping your mouth shut about something like this. What's that supposed to mean?" "Dunno. Just feels somewhat out of character." Atsumu frowned, thinking. This was the longest he'd ever kept quiet about something that made him feel this strongly. He once spent hours talking about his favorite Degrassi episode, and yet here he was, sitting on something bigger. Something real. He blinked slowly, whispered to himself. "Oh my goodness." Osamu raised an eyebrow, fighting a grin. "I like him more than Degrassi." Osamu rolled his eyes. "I don't even think you like me more than that stupid show." Atsumu twisted his mouth in thought, then looked at him. Osamu sighed. "Just go. I'll be here when you get back." Atsumu leaned in, and kissed his brother on the cheek. Thanks Samu. Atsumu barely registered the sound of his own door shutting behind him. His heart was thumping in his chest, his socks slipped a little on the polished floor as he practically sprinted the few doors down. Knocked twice, too fast, too eager, and when the door opened, he swore time stopped. Sakusa stood there, hair swept back and held in place by a tan Rilakkuma headband, under-eye masks glowing slightly under the warm apartment lighting. He was wearing a navy long sleeve that hung off one shoulder, sleeves swallowed his hands, and black and white plaid pajama pants that dragged a little over his bare feet. Atsumu blinked. His mouth parted. Then he just knew. He had to say it. Hey? Sakusa said slowly, tilting his head, eyes narrowing with soft concern. I thought you were hanging out with your brother, what happened? Well I was but... Atsumu said, breathless, still looking at him like he was the best thing he'd ever seen. I have to do something more important. Sakusa's brows furrowed just slightly, lips parted to ask, what, but he didn't get the chance. Atsumu stepped forward, cupped his face, and kissed him. It wasn't rushed, or desperate, it was full. They both sank into it, Sakusa's hands fluttering up to Atsumu's shoulders before settling there. When they broke apart, Sakusa blinked, his expression unguarded and faintly bewildered. Skasa, we do that all the time though, I love you. Atsumu said with his voice low and steady, eyes on him. I love you a lot. And I don't think I've been myself with you recently. There was a pause. A softening of Sakusa's features, shifting from confusion into something warm, relieved. He pulled Atsumu into the apartment without a word, shut the door behind them, and said with a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Finally. Atsumu blinked. What do you mean finally? You aren't the most subtle person I know. Sakusa said, gently tugging Atsumu further inside. I was just wondering why it took you so long to tell me. Then he turned, and murmured. I'll be right back. And disappeared into the bathroom. Atsumu stood there, heart in his throat, until Sakusa returned, under-eye masks gone. He walked over and wrapped his arms around Atsumu's shoulders, letting Atsumu rest his hands on his waist. I love you too Atsumu. He said quietly, forehead resting against his. I really do. Atsumu blinked rapidly and then kissed him, smiling through it. Why didn't you say anything? I wanted you to do it first. There's that spoiled Tokyo boy I love. Atsumu teased. I'm not spoiled. Oh, baby. Atsumu cooed, leaning in again. Their noses brushed. Yes you are. He kissed him again, this time deeper, and they melted into it. For a while they stayed like that, wrapped up in each other, warmth shared and quiet. After a minute, Sakusa pulled back just slightly and said. I was so confused on why it took you an eternity. It really wasn't like you to be so silent. Atsumu let out a quiet chuckle. Seems like everybody knows me more than I do myself. He kissed him once more, softly this time, and said. I still want that list of things you love about me. And you'll get them. Sakusa said, already smiling again. Throughout our relationship. Oh. Atsumu said, eyes lighting up. I didn't even know we were in one of those. Sakusa stepped away, turning his back and walking toward his bedroom. You do now. Atsumu muttered, as he followed. God, I'm obsessed with this man. You're going to shower before sleeping in my bed. Sakusa said, already back in the bathroom, pulling out a face mask. And I need to finish my nightly skincare routine. I told Osamu I'd come back. Sakusa looked at him over his shoulder. Okay. Don't be like that. Atsumu said, wrapping his arms around Sakusa from behind, nose brushing behind his ear as he pressed a kiss there. Be like what? Sakusa said, not looking at him. You can go. There was a beat of silence, then. I'll stay. Atsumu murmured. Good. He said as he leaned back slightly into him as he smoothed the mask over his face. Atsumu pulled away and stripped, heading to the shower. When the cold water hit his skin like a hug, he smiled. When did you realize you were endlessly in love with me? He asked, suds dripping off his shoulders. Sakusa sat crisscross on the closed toilet lid, rolling his eyes fondly. Probably when I saw you again, not knowing you were on the blackjack halls. Then you hugged me very tightly with no hesitation. It felt like I was melting in you to be honest, I was so flustered. Oh really? Atsumu teased, putting his head under the stream, letting his scalp feel the coolness of the water. Guess I'm quite the charmer, huh? Sakusa stood up, casually reached in, and twisted the knob to the opposite end. Atsumu screeched, jumping back as steam hissed up around him. What the hell? Sakusa laughed, sharp and genuine, and it made Atsumu freeze. Not from the heat, but from the sound of it. He turned around and just stared, wet hair dripping in his eyes. He realized he wanted to hear that laugh forever.